Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome. Welcome to class 3 of Muhaarimul-Lisaan. We'll be very brief because I do have some work from the law that I am engaged in. So we'll be short, inshallah ta'ala, and just do a quick read and get some benefit.
Listening to a little conversation earlier. Listening to a little conversation earlier.
Sorry, guys. Looking at Saleh. Where's maybe look into okay. All right. Give me 1 second. Okay, so we're back into the book. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. I don't know where my pen went. I bet you my wife took it. Okay. Well, Class 3, FIQH 101, Beneficial Readings, the Prohibitions of the Tongue. This book is really FIQH 101. I like to say that it's FIQH 101 because it's dealing pretty much with every aspect of life. And as we get through the book, inshallah ta'ala, you'll see that it's dealing with every aspect of life. You can get this book. My sheikh produced the book. Most of his books, his writings, you can find them on this link that I have posted on the screen. It's the Taba Foundation. Also, you can go to tabafoundation.org, inshallah ta'ala, if you want to support Sheikh Rami and Sood and his efforts. He does a lot, alhamdulillah. Books like this. He learned these books while he was in Mauritania, and he is going through a lot to convert this knowledge into something that's beneficial for us in the West. So if you can support Sheikh Rami and Sood, you can find him on Facebook. He's on Instagram. He's on Twitter. Sheikh Rami and Sood. He's out in California. He's doing a lot to to translate materials, translate works, provide tafsir for certain sacred knowledge and sacred works, stuff that you would never learn and that you would never find if you do not have some type of connection to those type of people. Alhamdulillah, he went to North and West Africa and studied. He's been all over the world studying with certified world-renowned classical shuyukh, and he came back to to teach the people in America. So if you can at all, anything will do. Support his efforts because he's doing this mostly fi sabilillah. And if it was not for his efforts, y'all would not have me. Alhamdulillah. Of course you would, because it's by the sake of Allah, but we ain't gonna get into qadr. that's Aqidah. Tune in tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. Tuesday at 8, we have Imam Nadir going through Aqidah. So we'll get started, inshallah. Last lesson, we missed last week. I had a bunch going on. Last lesson, we covered how it was that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was pre-eternal. He's everlasting. Everything belongs to him, and he is the protector. These are the things that we must say and we must believe and we must proclaim with our tongues. When it's said with our tongue, it's definitely in our minds and our hearts, and then we proclaim it, and then these things translate into actions, inshallah ta'ala. So this is the importance of Muhaarimul-Lisaan. Muhaarimul-Lisaan is the prohibitions on the tongue. It is the had. It is the right of Allah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has on your tongue. And the tongue, as we know, the Prophet ﷺ said, this is one of two things. This is paraphrasing this hadith. It is one of two things that will guarantee us hellfire. So if we can control our tongues and we can control what is between our legs, then this right here is the key to paradise. That is the key to paradise. So this book right here is very key. And inshallah, we'll work on the 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 Muhaarim of what's between the legs. Inshallah, we'll work on something for that. But I think everybody know what know what to do. Okay, so we covered that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tied effects to causes, and He has prohibited the prohibited matters. We also covered that the prohibitions of the tongue also apply to pawning and for the zakat collector, and see class 2 for the details of what I'm recapping. And we covered referring positively to something that is blameworthy in the Sharia is from the prohibitions of the tongue. Also, from the prohibition of the tongue is referring negatively to something that is praiseworthy in the Sharia. And then lastly, we had covered it is for this reason that one is a sinner if he refers to something in a way that makes it seem as if it is not prohibited, haram. Also, it would be you would be a sinner if the person says that something would imply that something permissible that's halal is prohibited, and the one who praises the oppressors. That's where we stopped at in class 2. So if you want to see the details, inshallah ta'ala, go to our pages. You can go to the Sunnah for Us on Facebook or the True Aqidah of the Salaf on Facebook, and also on my personal Facebook page. If you want to see the details of what I just recapped, I read that with the tafsir. So inshallah, bismillah, we will go further. Next line. Excuse me. Likewise, it is prohibited to relay inappropriate matters of the heretics, the mulhideen. The mulhideen have said about the prophet, what the mulhideen have said about the prophets, the heretics. The tafsir to that, this includes the insults made against them and any disrespect showed to their status in both the shifa and the mi'yar. The following is mentioned. It is prohibited to mention the sayings of the disbelievers and the heretics if it is done as a form of chatting and late night gossip. The same goes for the stories of people about silly things, the jokes of the clowns or the foolish people, hearsay, and that which is undignified. The degree of prohibition and the punishment incurred for these matters vary. If a person unknowingly repeats these stories, B, it is not his practice to do so normally, or C, what is mentioned is not a serious matter, D, and he does not seem to feel that what was said was something good, then he should be warned about engaging in this type of speech. So whatever the non-Muslims say about our prophets, it's not even good for us to even just repeat it without any legitimate reason whatsoever. So this is something that definitely applies to us in our day and time. We have a lot of talking is the hay of the day. This is the talking is the new currency nowadays. So we have to know the rules of talking. So even in regards to just leisurely repeating what deviant sects of Islam say about the prophets, or what non-Muslims say about the prophets, which is not correct, which is not right and exact within the framework of Islam, this is not permissible to do. Next line. unless there is a legal sharia reason, such as warning an ignorant person. The tafsir. The proof for this is that in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has relayed what the heretics have said about him and his messengers, alayhimus salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done this to negate, number one, negate what they have said. Number two, warn others of their disbelief. Number three, promise a punishment for what is said. And number four, to refute what is said. Narrating what the heretics, the people from deviant sects in Islam, have said is also found in sound hadiths of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. The early Salaf, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, and the later Khalaf, rahmatullah alayhim. Generations have all narrated the sayings of the disbelievers and heretics. They have done this both in their writings and in their gatherings for the purpose of clarifying it to the people and to refute what was said. For further reading on this matter, see the Shifa'a of Qadi Ayad, rahmatullahi alayh. There he has mentioned that when a person relays these stories, the way in which it was said, as well as the circumstances, has to be analyzed. The ruling of narrating the story will differ, that it could be obligatory, recommended, prohibited, or disliked. So this is very, very, very serious. This is very serious. It's not good. Just like I just said, it's not good for us to just be sitting around talking, just exchanging information with individuals. There should be a reason, and there should be the reason that it should be done is for one of those four reasons that were just listed: to negate what the heretics, the deviant Muslim sects, and the non-believers say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his messengers, alayhi salam, to warn others of their disbelief, to promise a punishment for what they have done, and to refute what is said. For those four reasons, it could be permissible to mention the things that heretics and deviant Muslim sects and non-Muslims say about the prophets, alayhi salam. Next line. Also prohibited would be for one to say Adam disobeyed his Lord if one is not reciting the Quran. The tafsir. If I can find it. Look like I missed something. Okay, there's two different tafsir. Okay, so there's tafsir just for the statement from the text that for somebody to say that Adam alayhi salam. This is very important because in our culture, a lot of us grew up as Christians, and we live in a Christian culture, a Christian Judeo culture, and so we can get caught up in the culture and what they say about our Sayyid Adam alayhi salam, the first man ever. So there's tafsir for that statement, and then there's tafsir for the statement that followed it. The tafsir. The same ruling applies to mentioning any other of the prophets, alayhimus salam, in this way. In the Madkhal, it states that unless reciting the Quran or mentioning a hadith, anyone who says that any of the prophets, alayhimus salam, committed a sin will have fallen into kufr. This is big. This is big. Oh, I forgot to promote, y'all. Hey, shout out to Black Muslim Media. Send us a like, send us hearts, send us thumbs. Drop us a comment, drop us a salam alaikum, something. Hey, salam alaikum. Drop that for support the efforts, support the brothers. We're taking our dear time to study and to convey and bring these things to y'all. So support. Share this. Subscribe to the YouTube. It's called the Black Sunnah, where we're taking the Sunnah, the divine Sunnah, and we are focusing the divine Sunnah on the Black community, the problems in the Black community. This is something that has never been done, and before we started it, alhamdulillah. So make dua for the efforts that we're making, that we stay right and that we stay exact, and support. Okay, so this is what we like to call, what the Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah like to call tafweed, where a statement, a troubling, a statement that challenges our human logic, unless we know the parameters, the divine parameters, we don't go into it and we don't open it up. We just say what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said. And unless you have studied, and we're getting ready to get into the tafsir of that statement in the Quran in regards to Adam, unless you know that, and then when you say it, you say this the tafsir, it's not permissible to say it. Excuse me. So our Sheikh provided us with the tafsir from the Madkhal that said that if a person does this, this would be an act of kufr, which is big. This is big. That's and we would have to make tawbah from this, and we have to be cognizant of it. Sorry, trying to get the kids together. It may seem that this person is an apostate, a murtad, but it might also be that he is one who has cursed the prophets, alayhi salam. As Abdul Bakr mentioned when discussing the verse, and we have taken an oath from Adam, Qadi Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, rahmatullah alayhi, said, it is not permissible for anyone to mention this unless they are reciting this verse or a hadith of the Prophet alayhi salam, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Whereas if a person were to mention that from their own accord, it would not be permissible. With respect to our immediate fathers who are like us. So, what does one think if it were to be mentioned about our first and great father, the first prophet, alayhi salam, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has excused and given? The question arises that if Adam alayhi salam is infallible, he's ma'asum, how could he have done something wrong? There are a number of responses to this question, including, okay, so at this point, Sheikh is taking us into what is the tafsir. What do we do? Because we know we have the concept. This is why, like those deviant sects, those deviant groups of Islam, when they say, "Hey, we follow Quran and Sunnah according to the way of the Salaf, we follow the Quran and Sunnah according to the way of the Sahaba," this is why that is impossible. This is an example right here. So anybody who is chanting, because that's all it is a chant. Anybody who is chanting that they follow the Quran and Sunnah according to the way of the Salaf, they take note and take mind of this person. Because if you just follow strictly the text without the proper tafsir, the proper explanation of the texts, I'm talking about the Quran and the Hadith, is you're gonna find contradictions. And if you do not follow the proper imams, the proper knowledge about these seeming contradictions, you're gonna be lost. You will never like so you would travel in your studies all so when you studying and you're trying to learn things, you want to get to a certain destination, and that destination is understanding. Once you get to that destination of understanding, then only can you translate that into action into your everyday life, which is the goal. Correct? I'm sure everybody agrees with that. Nobody, well, most people are not studying for any other reason. If you're studying for any other reason, then you need to check your sincerity, and you also need to check your salah, the sincerity inside of your salah. So when you're not following the correct way, you're traveling, and then you meet something that you cannot understand on your own. and you're left with that gap. Here's understanding. Here's where you are, and you follow the Quran and Sunnah according to the way of Salaf. You follow the Quran and Sunnah according to the way of Sahaba. Boom, you run into the Quran and Sunnah. Now you've hit a wall. What do you do? Don't be like the people of before, the communities before us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warned us not to follow them. What they did, because they picked up the divine text on their own, they got lost. Because one verse says this, another verse says that, and a prophet says this and that, and you lost. So you never make that connection to understanding. And if you never make that connection to understanding, you will never be able to translate your understanding into action. This is why being cautious of those deviant sects, those deviant groups in Islam. This is why you must caution yourself. What all of the scholars from the time of the Salaf has advised us about this, and y'all hear me hooting and hollering, hooting and hollering on this all day, every day. And I'm saying this because we don't understand it, and it's important. What the Salaf said for us about this is that we must follow valid scholarship, and the only valid scholarship that exists today is within the 4 schools. So pick you one of those 4 schools, any one of them you want. First, you should find a teacher in one of those 4 schools, and then pick that's your choice. So find you a Hanbali scholar, a Hanbali imam, find you a Hanafi, a Maliki, or a Shafi'i imam, and you go and do as much Quran and Sunnah as you can possibly take. I promise you, you will not be able to complete it. If you like following Quran and Sunnah according to the way of the Salaf, well, jump into the knowledge of the 4 madhahib, and I guarantee you'll wear yourself out. I'm just coming out of the 2nd level of fiqh in Maliki school, and here's just one of the tafsir. So don't tell me that you follow Quran and Sunnah according to the way of the Salah. And they got folks that sit around and memorize this stuff. I'm just trying to learn it for my own good. They got folks that sit around and memorize this stuff. So I guarantee you will not complete it. I guarantee you. And that's not like a bad thing I'm trying to say about people, but I'm just saying it's more than enough there for you to do. So back on track. I just had to make that point because we don't understand that. And picking up books, we are ordering books. We sacrifice some money, hard-earned money that we go and work for. We're going to work very hard for this money. We're sacrificing that money and buying books, and we don't even understand them. There's a curriculum and there's a course that we should follow, at least for you to build a foundation, and then you can build on top of that foundation. If you don't have the understanding of the foundational studies, you ain't getting nowhere. You ain't getting nowhere. So I had to make that point because this is an example. So what is the contradiction, or what seems to be the contradiction in this particular aspect? So we all know that the Quran promises us that that our prophets are ma'asum, that our prophets are infallible. They do not and they will not make mistakes. The logic behind, and this is also your Aqidah lessons. You're getting a little bit of Aqidah right here. This is logical because if the prophets were to err, then that means that there's error in the revelation that came to the prophets, which means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is most definitely perfect, is kamil, most definitely perfect, would have made a mistake. So we as Muslims, we do not believe that our prophets could have made a mistake. Now, we're stuck. We're stuck. So we know what was said about our prophet, our father, Adam, alayhi salam. We know what was said. So now what was said in the Quran about Adam, and for the sake of the lesson, because we're going to go into it, about Adam not obeying Allah. I don't like to say disobeying. I'm going to say not obeying Allah. what do we do? So on one hand, the Quran is telling us, and mind you, y'all better buck up, because I done had, some Christians come at me, some sharp ones come at me, and if you don't know this kind of stuff, they gonna shake your iman. So one point, the Quran says that Adam, all of the prophets are perfect and don't make mistakes. And then we had another verse when it says that Adam made a mistake. So, number one, we must take from this lesson that it's not permissible to say the mistake that Adam made unless we're given a lesson and we're explaining it, or if we're just reciting the verse of the Quran, which is tafweed, which is when it comes to us, we don't open it up, we leave it alone, we just go to the next verse. And it's not necessary that you all the time that you open up the mutashabihat. This is stuff that is mutashabihat. This is what you must do with all those verses that you can't figure out, that does not fit your human intellect, like Allah being positioned on the throne, the istiwa ala al-arsh, the biggest Aqidah debate of all time. You cannot understand it. So the best thing that you can do is just leave it alone. You will not be questioned about this on the day of Qiyamah. Believe in it, because Allah gave us this information in the Quran, but don't try and open it up. That is not the way of our Salaf. The way of our Salaf was to not open it up. They took the ayah, and there's evidence for it. I posted it. Look at all my posts. Look at all my videos. There's evidence. All of the Salaf, all of our Salaf, their preference was to hear these ayats like this that are troubling for us and just pass them. There was a saying, Imam Shafi'i said, these ayats came to us and we just passed them as they came. We didn't break it open. We didn't touch it. We didn't go into it. We didn't try to define it. We didn't try to figure out. The people who are trying to figure out, the people who are sitting around conversating about the mutashabihat, these people, what our Allah said about these people is there's sickness inside of their heart. They sick people. So if you ever find a group of Muslims, or you belong to a masjid or an imam or whoever, and he's sitting around saying, okay, today's lesson, we're going to talk about the istiwa on the arsh. Get up and leave. Get up and leave. If you stay in that gathering, it's going to be a sin on you. Get up and leave. Now, if they're going to tell you, how to deal with the mutashabihat, then stay and learn. And the lesson's going to be 2 seconds. They're going to say, make tafweed, recite the ayah, leave it alone. Lesson over. Okay, back to the lesson. And we get into the close of this next session, this session. So it's not permissible. It's haram for us to talk about the mistake that was mentioned in the Quran of our father Adam, alayhi salam, unless we mention the following. Adam alayhi salam was infallible, and he believed that the prohibition was only one of being disliked. So the situation of what the Quran mentions about Adam's mistake, and that's not even the best word to say, but the situation about our father Adam, the very first mistake known to mankind, that's the first condition. Alleviate that with that. Say that Adam alayhi salam did not believe that his not obeying Allah in that particular respect was something that was mandatory. This was just something that Allah put as a recommendation, and that he did not think like, I ain't listening to Allah, I'll do what I want to do, like how we find in the Bible. Second, Adam alayhi salam thought that the rule was abrogated since Iblis gave him advice and swore that he was telling the truth. Adam alayhi salam did not think that anyone could lie and at the same time swear with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is important to also understand, because we don't know. So this is important to know, because this we can say like this was the first lie. Iblis came and brought Terrell. You still right here? Terrell. No, that's what I'm saying. You don't have to. I can tell him to do it. Go tell Issa Musa and come sit right here. There had not been a lie known to man and known to the earth as of yet. There hasn't been a lie. So how would Adam alayhi salam have known that Iblis was coming with deception? Third, Adam forgot the prohibition. This is natural human error. So we don't mention Adam's situation unless you put it inside of these three perimeters. Sit down right here. I told y'all to be quiet. Don't move either. Sit. Leave me alone. I'm doing a video. Leave me alone. And I don't care. I don't care. Sit right there. Okay. So it's not permissible to mention these things unless it's within these parameters. So when you're talking with your friends and you're talking with your family, hey, don't you start. Don't start. So if you're talking with your friends and your family, it's not permissible to just say these things leisurely. You should keep it within these parameters. Okay, going forward, make sure I still am in the right. Okay, next verse. With scholars, or I'm sorry, it is prohibited to mention that a prophet experienced some hardship unless one is narrating or discussing with scholars or serious students, who it is not feared that they will be misguided. The tafsir. This is in reference to something. This is in reference to mentioning the hardships that the prophets, alayhi salam, faced during their lives. Examples would be mentioning the natural human qualities that they would have experienced, the trials that were given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase their reward, having patience for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the difficult circumstances, the hardship and torment dealt to them by their enemies, the early hardships that they had to deal with, the bad things that they had to deal with during their lives, and the hardships they faced in gaining sustenance. So with that parameter set, understand that parameter first before we start to engage into the hardships stop. Give me that right now. Understand this parameter before we engage into conversation about the hardships that the prophets, alayhi salam, had suffered. The significance of that is because people take these stories nowadays. Atheist people, they take these stories and they try to make us look bad. Hey, Musa, go over there. Go over there. They try to make us look bad, make us look poor, make us look backwards, make us look prehistoric, make us look like we're not up to modern standard. We're not liberal enough, and so the weak non-Muslims and atheists, or even people inside of deviant Islamic sects, would take these verses and be like, there's a hadith. There's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ used to tie a rock to his stomach because of hunger. We should not mention this stuff without the proper context, because somebody would hear that and say, "Oh, I ain't tying no rock around my stomach, man. You can forget about that. If to become a Muslim means that I got to be starving and I got to be hungry, I'm cool." So we got to be careful. This is what these lessons are for. This is why it's called Muhaarimul-Lisaan, the prohibitions on the tongue. This is everyday stuff in conversation that we really just don't know. and especially living in this type of society, these kinds of conversations casually come up, and we'll let these things slip out of our mouths. We'll conversate about it, and we have deviant individuals that will attack the divine revelations, the revelation, because of because of the deviancy inside of their own heart, just to legitimize and justify them wanting to be a deviant to Allah, not wanting to follow what Allah and His messenger said. They make these arguments. They actually study just to make these arguments. So, the wisdom, I'm sure we know, of the hardships that the prophets alayhimus salam has suffered was number one, their iman was unshakable. They knew Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on a personal basis, so you couldn't shake their iman. Number two, one thing we want to understand is the things in this life are a trial and a tribulation to people. It's a trial and a tribulation to people. Okay, so when you have a luxurious life, and a lot of people believe in this gospel prosperity, even nowadays Muslims, they believe that you have all these lavish things and all this lavish big time lifestyle. At best, these things are distracting you from spending your time in worship. At best, if you have not taken these things as a God besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You got a nice car, you got a nice house, you can make a good salary every single year, and you think that you puff yourself up with pride and think like, I've accomplished this, I went to college and I've done this, I've done that, and so on and so forth, that you begin to give yourself the credit for these things as opposed to giving it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or even using this luxury and this high position that you have in life in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, using it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way of Islam, using it for that. These things will at best distract you to get that stuff a lot of times. The more you do in the dunya, the more you'll get out of the dunya. The less you do in the dunya, the less you'll get out of the dunya. And that cost you time. It cost you time, valuable time that you will never, ever, ever, ever get back, that you could have spent worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the hardships that our the hardships that the prophets alayhimus salam had followed, the hardship that they followed, it was not a test. I mean, it was I guess you could say it was a test for them, but you were not going to shake their iman. But it was an example for us, for the people who are witnessing them, that they will not be guiled and deluded from Islam. It will not become a distraction for them. So them, quote unquote, how we would look at it from a worldly standpoint, them being impoverished, they were enriched. They were not impoverished. As a matter of fact, the Prophet Muhammad, alayhi salatu wasalam, he was given the option at the end of his life to stay. I don't know if it was I don't know if it was forever or for a little bit longer, or to go ahead and die. And he chose to die. Alhamdulillah. He chose to die. Going to the next, I want to go to the next world where the real riches and the real luxury is. So all these hardships were, as an example for us to keep you low, keep you grounded. That is the proper context, not that they had a low socioeconomic status, and this is the reason why they were religious. Because we hear this talk in this Judeo-Christian and atheistic society. We hear that type of talk. Okay, I am at my limit. Did I have more? Okay, so there's one more paragraph on this point, and then we're going to go. We'll pick up next week in the next lesson, inshallah. I actually owe y'all 2 lessons. I planned on doing it, but I got some work that I have to do. This last paragraph of the tafsir. All these matters do not detract from the state of the prophets or belittle them. Nonetheless, one should be careful of mentioning these hardships to people that would not understand them or may experience tribulation by hearing them, in the sense that they might say something that is not befitting to the prophet. So we just pretty much covered that. It is for this reason that the author mentioned that it could be mentioned to scholars and students, because scholars and students understand these things. Stop it. The scholars and students, they understand these things, so it's okay to mention it to them. The scholars would be those who are firmly grounded in knowledge and are not shaken by ambiguous matters. The students would have to be those that are intelligent and know the wisdom behind those stories. The reason that one can mention them is that they have a clear understanding of the station of the prophets salam and their grand status, as has been mentioned in the Shifa of Ibn Hajar. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani said, the Qadi Iyad has mentioned about it being prohibited to mention these things to the average person is correct if the circumstances dictate that it would be a tribulation, it would be a fitna for them, or that they will say something unbefitting or otherwise. It would seem that mentioning it would be merely disliked. So to close that point, it would will also be bad to mention the fitna of the prophets, because we don't want to hear anybody say anything bad about our prophets. Just like it mentioned before in the text that we don't want to hear anybody say anything bad about our actual fathers, our biological fathers, where the prophets are more important than our biological fathers. Does not take from the importance of our biological fathers, but the prophets, alayhimus salam, are more important, have more of a right to be followed than our biological fathers, because they have been guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. So we're going to close this lesson up for the day. Does anybody have any questions for anything that I read in this particular lesson? Stop it. Any questions? Inshallah, next week or next lesson, I'm gonna try to do an extra lesson to make up for last week that I missed, and we're gonna go. We're getting into the deep stuff now. That's kind of the surface. We're going into the deep stuff now, and this is it's going to be talking about the disputes amongst the Sahaba, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. And this, most people do not know the fiqh about this stuff, especially our Shia brothers and sisters. We need to understand the proper context and the background of the fitna that happened with the Sahaba, the eminent Sahaba. Okay, I don't see any questions. So I guess, what's up, Bucky? My guy, Bucky Barnes on here. It's my guy, alhamdulillah. Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, we're gonna close this lesson up. I don't know if Imam Malik is doing the seerah of the Prophet alayhi salatu salam tonight. It should be at 9. I haven't talked to him, so I don't know if he's doing it. If not, we're going to. I'll probably just repost one of his old episodes for the seerah of the Prophet alayhi salam. At 9 o'clock. So y'all stay tuned for all of the stuff that we have going. Tomorrow we have Aqidah. Imam Nadir missed the fiqh lessons last Sunday. I don't know what happened. I'm gonna get with him. We're gonna dock his pay. But we have Aqidah lessons tomorrow at 8 p.m. inshallah ta'ala, right after Maghrib. So if you and it's the authentic text of the Aqidah to Tahawiyah. This is the appropriate official Aqidah. Nobody's Aqidah book is above Imam Tahawi. He was the first person not the first person to write one, of course, but this is the earliest known Aqidah book that we have today. that dates to the time of the Salaf. So don't let nobody tell you they follow in the Quran or Sunnah according to the way of the Salaf if they're not teaching from the authentic works from the time of the Salaf, inshallah. And it's not the Saudi Arabian scholars, I promise you. It is not the Saudi Arabian scholars. Only take this stuff from people who are versed in the 4 schools. Only in the 4 schools. So inshallah, tomorrow we have the Aqidah. We will have another episode of Love Talks Live, inshallah. Wifey was working a lot last week, so we could not get together. I really want to make that show for women, like a space for sisters, inshallah ta'ala, because they kind of get left off with all these internet durus, if you will, these lessons. You know, we kind of forget about the sisters and what they have going on. They have a different context of Islamic learning. So I'm trying my best to create a space. My wife also just created the Lady 18 group. And it's a compilation of sisters who are pretty much versed about the deen. And they have a study group, a private study group, inshallah. And they get ready to do their thing now. But I think they are going to be uploading their recordings. They're recording it. And I think they're going to be uploading their recordings, inshallah. So I got to go so that she can have the floor for her to do their things. I love y'all for the sake of Allah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله ولا إله إلا الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Like, share, support Black Muslim Media. I'm out.